Hello everybody and welcome to my presentation, which is titled Noise in Times of Trouble, Senyawa, the Alkisah Network and the Decentralization of an Underground Music Community. My name is Luigi Monteanni and I am a PhD candidate in ethnomusicology at SOAS University of London and part of the Alkisah Network enterprise with my tape label Arte Tetra based in Milan. I'm going to show how the avant-garde Indonesian duo Senyawa has started a music of co-production for their 2021 album Alkisah with 40 labels, 40 independent labels around the world, counteracting both the social restriction posed by COVID-19 and the hierarchical, centralized methodologies of production of the music industry, the mainstream music industry. So, first thing first, I also want to assess how this experience was paramount to a new understanding of ethnomusicological research, especially ethnomusicological research in times of travel, since I was leading a research in a context of disease and social disruption, we can say. So I want to go back to Timothy Rice, ethnomusicologist Timothy Rice article of 2014 about ethnomusicology in times of trouble, in which he asks three fundamental questions, which are: first, will an ethnomusicology of times and places of trouble change our theories and methods in any way? Second, can our understanding of the nature of music built up in countless studies conducted in relatively peaceful, stable settings prove helpful in ameliorating cases of conflict, violence, disease, and social disruption? And third, how will the study of music in times of places of trouble affect our understanding of the nature of human music making? I want you to keep this in mind while we explore what happens, so as to take this question back at the end and understand why this experience was important for ethnomusicologists and musicians alike. So first thing first, Senyawa are an avant-garde duo composed by singer Ruli Shabara and poly-instrumentalist Vukis Suryadi. They were founded in 2010 in Yogyakarta, Central Java, and they have produced 19 among albums, EPs, splits, and various collaboration works that saw the interaction of the duo with renowned international, national, and regional artists among the one that they knew, becoming an inspiration for musicians operating in the field worldwide, the field of experimental music, of avant-garde music. They have offered their interpretation of a fusion of avant-garde languages and regional heritage, if you want to call it so, albeit not fully localized. Anyway, as we can see in the image on the left, there is a post by Senyawa dated 19 September 2020 in which the band announced their new album that was going to be out for the 21st of February in 2021, and it was titled Alkisah, or Once Upon a Time in Bahasa Indonesia. With the post, basically, the band was responding to COVID-19, isolating musicians, people worldwide, but especially musicians and experimental musicians. And it was a work that wanted to challenge the rigidity and hierarchy of the mainstream music industry at the same time. So it was a full political stance of help from musicians, by musicians, to all musicians. And as of course, the post states, it was an open call opened on their social networks, mainly Instagram and Facebook, and that saw the participation, as I said, of more than 40 labels worldwide. Of course, the project wasn't total random, but it was quite flexible. There were initial rules, both written ones and let's say, commonly understood to be important ones, although not explicit. The explicit one were that no online music distributors would have been employed by the labels, which means no Spotify, no Tidal and the like, because this would have assured an intellectual right to the people that would have uploaded these files. And secondly, that only one label per country was allowed in the project, a condition that was largely renegotiated when in many countries, like in Italy, where we collaborated with the Communion label, expressed their intention of collaborating nonetheless, so Senyawa opened the project. The second batch of rules was that, of course, everyone was supposed to engage and collaborate as much as possible with the network and their members, labels and artists alike. And second, that everyone would have agreed on the output they had generated via a signed document stating the format, the number of copies, and the economical share to which Senyawa would have been entitled in the end. In general, we have said that the album was a political stance that brought the motto decentralization should be the future. So, arguably, a project on decentralization, or best, that exploits decentralization, as we will see, as a mechanism for communal music production and mutual help. The four pillars that were going under the decentralization should be the future motto were certain shared ownership of the album. Everyone was entitled in the same way to the intellectual property and physical property of the album, the freedom to capitalize on the project and to, of course, consequently exploit the project to any end possible, two choices that were not particularly supported by Senyawa, but at the same time were signaling the freedom that you had in managing the project as you wanted, and secondly, the intention of providing physical resources, physical means to those in need if they needed. Last, of course, the freedom to distribute the album as one pleased, especially on the national territory, so as to avoid overlap between different distributions and productions. This that we see at the center is the symbol, the logo of the Alkisah enterprise, for those who are wondering. So of course, these pillars themselves signal an intention, like a political intention, political status, let's say. The first staple was that the project wanted to challenge primary production and distribution channels, such as the ones employed and suggested by the music industries in general, production plans, huge PRs and distributions agency and the like. Second, they wanted to prove that there were other ways of doing things, that there are not the established way, that those are not the only ones that works. Those are the ones that make us, in a way, in their definition, lazy to explore other possibilities, more ethical possibilities. And at the same time, they wanted, of course, to kickstart the process of community building between different scattered underground institutions and independent labels worldwide, so as to create this network of mutual help. And the last one, the most vague, but also maybe the one to which Senyawa were more interested, which was to inspire others in trying new alternative paths, because in the end, inspiration is the one that makes you, in a way, reason and work on new possibilities, on new ways of doing things. In general, the project is not necessarily a project on decentralization, we have said, because according to Rulli Shabara, the entire rule was that the locals know what is best for them. So it's a global decentralized project, but it's based on a focus on locality, on each of the locality, making that each of the localities and the institutions localized in a place could play according to their own necessary rules that no other could know. So instead, it's not an experiment in decentralization, but an experiment in letting go of control, letting go of power that we have on our intellectual properties, such as Senyawa has done with their album. In this label, I see this slide as one of the most interesting one. It shows a distribution of the labels, and it's interesting. We cannot see it completely because it's not zoom enough, but I explained to you that there are labels everywhere besides Africa and South America, Latin America. The distribution, it's interesting because the majority of the label is in Southeast Asia, but there are also many in Europe, of course, which became kind of the two poles of the entire project. At the same time, the map is interesting because it was generated by the network on the Alkisah's official website, and it signals an interest in self-documentation, in self-explaining in a way, in gathering data about what we are as a global enterprise, we may say. This is another very interesting part, and it's the Google sheet, the data sheet, where all the informations about the different labels, their formats, their location, what they were going to do, were archived. And it also contributed to this idea that Senyawa, but especially the Alkisah network, wanted to be organized and see their image, even if only in data, to understand what it means to make this kind of experiments. So the current state of the enterprise, 1 year, more than 1 year has passed, and Alkisah was released by 50 participating labels, almost from 37 different cities in 18 different countries. The numbers were staggering, so from now we can say that it has worked as an idea where 3,000 vinyl, 2,000 CDs, 1,200 cassette tape were produced with at least 35 original Alkisah artworks and various type of merch. And this, for who doesn't know it, is astounding for the numbers in the independent music industry, because usually you get from 300 to maximum 1,000 vinyls, which is the most convenient and expensive form of music production in the independent runs. But most importantly, something that is arguably unprecedented, not that the entire enterprise has precedence in any way, but like the the Alkisah album has produced 170 official remixes and reinterpretations curated by participating labels, as well as 19 different cover artworks that we can see partly in the image, and 38 unofficial, unauthorized, we can say, remixes, reinterpretations with stem files and projects provided by Yes No Wave Music, collaborating noise imprint from Yogyakarta. Of course, because the focus was that Senyawa spurred participants to realize their own local versions, their own local reinterpretations. Remixes were key because they were able to show how each of the formats was unique in any way. So no one was the original one, not even Senyawa's. We can see part of the merch here. Some are more regular types of merch that are offered by underground musicians, tapes, CDs, apparel in general. But we can also see a COVID mask, kind of, normal for the time that we were going through, but also Indonesian types of, like local type of produce, Indonesian and foreign as well. We can see on the left from top to bottom, an Indonesian sambal, a sauce, then we can see a Middle Eastern dagger, and then a jamu, an herbal drink that was produced. But the real, let's say, the most important moment, according to Rulli e Vuki, to Senyawa, was Pasar Alkisah, the Alkisah market, 48 hours festival in which each of the label was invited to present their own materials that could be related to their release, their version of Alkisah, but also to their own production, so as to show the density and variety of the projects involved in the Alkisah network. The interesting part was that more in general, you could really see the dimension of this network, as Rulli from Senyawa has said. Of course, all of this work couldn't have been possible without certain platforms. We have used an informational portal like Linktree, where all information and links could be gathered in a single page to give all information necessary to onlookers and participants. We use a Discord platform for networking, a networking platform where users can meet and discuss various topics, exchange various files. And last, of course, Google Drive, Drive platforms to archive materials that was key to organize both files for the release as well as for Pasar Alkisah for the festival. Of course, as we can see, we can think about, these are platforms for networking, these are decentralized platforms, but decentralization here doesn't necessarily provide the means to, let's say, decolonize the music business and to offer mutual help. Of course, Google not necessarily is a good partner for a society envisioning more equity between musicians in general. This is arguably one of the weaknesses of the or at least of the problematics of the problems, but equates with what Rulli has said, that usually decentralization and global, cosmopolitan music was intended as the rules of the West being applied to the East. So that's why it's not necessarily an experiment in decentralization as much in letting go of control and trying to share. Of course, the project per se is an ongoing development, albeit many participants have passed on and have lost interest in the enterprise, but it has produced various outputs, including radio shows, academic literature, a documentary, new networks and contacts between participants, and participations to various festivals. So in order to sum up what happened, we can see two main networks of shoots, one digital, one physical. On the left of the slide, we can see two bands, Paraquat and Za, offering a co-production to the labels that were involved that was following the same rules as Senyawa was Alkisah, although I don't know if these two projects worked in the end and they found people to co-produce their albums. And on the right, we can see the first physical reunion of some of the Alkisah Network's participants that was held in Chemnitz in Germany during the Cosmic Gathering 2021. You can see me with a pink shirt and a yellow cap, where people met and discussed the enterprise. Of course, there were also disadvantages, or at least like weird problematic points. In the end, all the rules were broken by some of the labels. On the left, we can see that one of the labels uploaded the album on Spotify finally. On the right, we can see that the album finished on Amazon, in a way obstructing this organic slash respectful distribution that was envisioned. And in the middle, we can see a review where only one label is cited as, making the work. So showing that main specific media outlet weren't able to conceive the album as more than a release, to understand its dimensions, if we want. This was last year's CTM festival, where we rediscussed Alkisah Network's potentialities and offshoots and the like in Germany, which was another positive outcome, because for the first time it saw also people that were necessarily living in the West. But at this point, some of you may question if the network really worked, if it made sense to do all of this. Since of course we were using decentralized platforms that on the other side weren't allowing equity, all the rules were broken in the end. Collaborating with huge platform capitalist institutions, we can say. And in the end, as you have seen from the images, the physical gathering and the media press focused on the West, on Europe, and their possibility to organize something, while Indonesians and people from Southeast Asia, which were the biggest part of the network, actually were arguably excluded, if not in the digital realm. But anyway, I think that we have to focus on 4 points. First one is that collaborations manage to generate shared value and impact through utilizing the network's global but local reach. But conversely, sharing accumulated power with smaller imprints didn't fully take off, as we have seen. Sold a lot of copies, but the centrality was for bigger labels. So, where for some of the participants, Alkisah was a tool to foster artistic communities, for others it was just another release, or worse, a new business model. Third, this musical and social network, I think it was just a starting point. So the important part to remember is that even according to Senyawa, this is an infrastructure that can be developed, modified, replaced, and multiplied according to many different needs. But its path showing the manifold possibilities that letting go of control opens. And in this sense, Alkisah showed how experiments prove and test the limits of artistic practices and their ethos, how art can become a tool to shed light on larger, uncharted portions of the map instead of something that just works or doesn't. So, going back to the questions posed by Timothy Rice about ethnomusicology in times of trouble, if it's possible to apply a normal, let's say, ethnomusicology to times and places of trouble, what new things we can learn, and what times and places of trouble can tell us about human music making. I want to partly answer and partly elude these questions by bringing two passages from Kyle and Esmondal. In the first one, Kyle said that rather than saying that we need to think through the fixed concepts in order to grasp the groove, is the reverse. We need to groove more in order to break open some concepts, drop other, keep all the mere ideas at a safe distance. So what I think is that, especially in times of places of trouble, the important thing is to participate as fans, as musicians, as collaborators, and then become ethnomusicologists, because as Ruli has said, this process has disclosed a lot of information. So it was not important. If it doesn't work, we'll do something else. That's what he said. Secondly, although some writers have considered the distinction of core and peripheral notions to be outdated, as global cultural flows have become more complex, in fact, it seems that there are still strong senses of exclusion and marginalization at work in many places. This is something told by David Esmondal, and it signals that trying these structures, trying this concept before even developing them fully, it's important so as to understand where the exclusion is, where the problems are, and how we can act physically. This was my presentation. Thanks, and get in touch with my email.